During my cancer journey, he was there for me. Doctor's appointments, all of that stuff, helped me through chemo. But there became some friction because I did not want to be intimate. I couldn't be intimate.
Right.
And so we had some tension, and we separated, not just because of that, but that was a part of it.
What was the conversation like? Understanding that you were battling cancer, like that in and of itself is such a sensitive topic, and then to make that an issue. What was the conversation like? Like, what did he say?
I don't know how real can we be on here? Because I'm about to be real. At first, it was really subtle. And I remember my best friend flew in from out of state. And one of the things that he said to her was like, you need to talk to your bestie and get her, to give me some. Relationships matter. I need you to understand. Relationships matter.
Welcome to Relationships Matter. I'm Chanel Scott.
And I am Josh Powell.
We have an amazing guest for you today, but before we get into the conversation, we want you to go ahead and like, subscribe, and share the Relationships Matter live podcast. All right, so today we have Miss Onyx Keesha. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes, we're excited. So Onyx Keesha is an author, Facing It Together. Talk a little bit about your book.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you guys I'm so excited to be here. I think relationships are at the center of everything. And a lot of times we get caught up in romantic relationships. But when we break it down, relationships are really at the center. And Facing It Together is about that. It's about those people who are the support system of someone who is going through their breast cancer journey. And it was really important for me to write this because I went through my own breast cancer journey. And throughout it, I noticed that some of my relationships blossomed, some were strained, and some I don't even talk to anymore.
Wow.
Wow. So that was just as hurtful and hard as going through the journey. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a companion book, to research and read and help your loved one who's going through this, whether it's your sister, your mom, your wife, your girlfriend, your daughter. And the book really helps you to dive into some of the things that they may be feeling and they may be thinking. And it's also, geared towards women of color. There are a couple of chapters in there that are very specific. So that's why I wrote it, Facing It Together, literally. How do we face it? Can you talk,
and that's like you came in beasting, so appreciate you for such an amazing opener. But can you touch on that real quick? Because you said the journey is different. You said our, meaning black and brown versus how that looks for other people. How so?
So there's so many factors, but the one that stands out to me the most is what I call the faith factor. And in so many aspects of our life as Black women, women of color, faith is at the center. But now when you're facing a disease, something toxic and cancerous in your body, it makes you question your faith. And also, there's this thing about pray it away. If I pray enough, it will go away. And prayer is a part of the healing process. But I sat in rooms with doctors who have said to me, these women did not go through chemo. They did not go through the treatment, and they wanted to take care of it on their own. And now they're stage 4.
Wow.
So for women of color, that's just one aspect, because culturally, faith is really central to who we are. So now we're struggling with the faith factor in our breast cancer journey.
Thank you.
That was good. Going back to the whole idea of faith.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came to my mind when you said that is faith without works is dead. And so God has given these doctors the knowledge and the wherewithal to be able to determine the right treatment, and not we just say we'll believe in God, but having something sustainable. And not just that, but having a right now word.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Not just believing in, what do you believe? What is your faith rooted in? Is it rooted in God? Is it rooted in the word? Do you have a specific word? So that is important. I'm so glad that you touched on that, because a lot of times people say, I have faith, but what is it rooted in? So talk a little bit about, so you know, this is Relationships Matter.
Yes.
Talk about your romantic life as you entered into this new phase of having to battle breast cancer. What was that like?
Ooh. So during my cancer journey, I was in 2 relationships, situationships, we'll call them. One was in the very beginning. So he was there for me, doctor's appointments, all of that stuff, you know, helped me through chemo. But there became some friction because I did not want to be intimate. I couldn't be intimate, you know. When you go through this journey, you almost feel like your body betrays you. And that became an issue for us. We had never been intimate, you know, but as the situation progressed, it was something that he really desired, and I could not do it.
So this was at the beginning of a new relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
Okay.
I'll say it was like a friendship that blossomed into more. And it all kind of happened at the same time.
Yeah.
Everything happened at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult because I could not find the words to really articulate why I was so offended by it. Like, of course, on the surface, I understand needs, but it almost felt like what I was going through wasn't important enough.
Right.
And so we had some tension, and we separated, you know, not just because of that, but that was a part of it.
What was the conversation like? Understanding that you were battling cancer, like that in and of itself is such a sensitive topic, and then to make that an issue. What was the conversation like? Like, what did he say? Because I know there are a lot of people who are experiencing what you experienced. I want to pull that out, and then I want to know how you addressed it.
Yeah, so at first it was really subtle. And I remember my best friend flew in from out of state, and one of the things that he said to her was like, you need to talk to your bestie and get her, you know, to give me some, you know. And that rubbed her the wrong way.
That was insensitive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do not necessarily, I don't feel like he was insensitive. However, what we have to understand is when we think about breast cancer or cancer, we either see like our elder, or we see the young kid we saw on TV with a bald head. We don't see our sisters, we don't see our cousins. So there were many times where I did not look like what I was going through. And so it was easy to kind of say, she's good, you know? And I don't necessarily know if I had the words. I just felt it. And I already felt unattractive. I already felt, you know, I didn't go through my journey saying, I'm going to beat this. I went through it saying, God, whatever your will is. And I just kept going. You know, there were moments where I didn't want to keep going, you know, especially during chemo, because you feel like a shadow of yourself. So I don't think I had the words, but when that, you know, took a pivot, it took a turn, I revisited someone who I was in a long-term relationship for almost 10 years, and we started rekindling. And this was now towards the end of my journey. So I did surgery, 20 weeks of chemo, and then 9 weeks of radiation. During that point, radiation was really difficult, and my partner and I were constantly arguing about big things, little things, just there was no safe space or no comfort there. And that made it very challenging. You know, I'm already fighting.
Right,
you
absolutely.
know, and now I'm fighting and crying. And I'm crying because we're not aligned, or because you are expressing things in a hurtful way. So it was very difficult. And to bring it back to the book, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write it, because I also understand that they could not have known what I needed if I could not articulate what I needed. It feels very insensitive to me, and going through it, it was. But I also like to give grace. And if they don't know what I may be feeling or thinking, or the insecurities that I'm having, then they can't really hold space for me, because I didn't have the words to say, this hurts me, but this hurts me on another level because of how I'm feeling about my battle.
Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't just romantic relationships. There were friendships that dissipated during the process as well, where it was kind of like I couldn't show up the way I used to show up, and it was taken personal.
I just the whole idea of having to battle cancer, right? I just can't imagine how you could create tension. Like I just had a friend of mine, she just lost her mom to cancer. We just funeralized her like a week ago.
Wow.
And just, I would listen to the conversations and you know, and I didn't hear from her all the time, but you understood what was happening. How could you make it a problem because somebody didn't call you back? You know what I'm saying? That just means you gotta drawing closer. That's how I'm seeing it. I can't even imagine giving somebody a difficult time, knowing that you don't know how this thing is gonna fare. You don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
It was definitely, it was a situation where my journey was so long. You know, in the beginning, there was a lot of compassion and sympathy. But, you know, as the months went on, we're 6 months later, I'm still battling.
People is like they've moved on.
They've moved on.
Kind of like a bad breakup.
It made me feel less than. It also made me feel weak. I was already physically feeling weak, but it made me feel weak because it affected me so much. And I really had to get to a place of healing to understand that it was not a reflection of my worth. Something else that happened is I feel like everybody summed me up to my lowest, especially if they met me or got close to me during that time. It was like, that was the sum of who I was, what I could do and be during those moments. And that's the same thing with both of my the people I was in a situationship with, because it was kind of like, you know, I had gained weight. My skin was blotchy. I didn't have the energy, even down to odors, you know, radiation burned your skin. And so it was, especially in my last one, it was very much judging me to that moment and feeling like this isn't what I want. And I respect that, but I also am like, if you knew me before, you know how I'm going to rock when this is over. And, you know, after I beat it, after I went through some more challenges, a breakup that took me so long to get over, then I started, God started to really bless me. And I started to produce for TV One, and I started to produce movies for Peacock. And I met my now wife. Like, all of this happened, and those same people who summed me up to my lowest now want to be in my face.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot I want to say.
Yeah.
I see you over there pondering.
But for me, out of respect, the reason why I just wanted to be quiet was, from a male point of view, give you the chance to articulate how you feel, not through a book, but with a person.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
I felt that throughout your journey, you haven't really had that opportunity with a male being present to do that. So I thought that was important. And I know Chanel kept giving me that cue, like, I know you got something. But we're going to dive into it, because when we get back, I do want to ask, what have you learned about yourself since battling, with this disease? So when we get back, relationships matter. Relationships matter. What's going on? Relationships matter, family. We are back, and before the break, I had asked this queen, what was something that she learned, that you learned about yourself during this journey?
So before I even get into that, and I was like, I'm not going to cry. I just want to really express to you what you said to me, how that affected me. Because my father died from cancer the day before my surgery, my cancer surgery. Wow. He had lung cancer, and we were going through his battle. And in the midst of that, I found out I had breast cancer. And he died the morning before my surgery. And I felt like, since he was gone, I never had a male figure to just see me. Like, my dad was the last person to see me. So I appreciate that, because I feel seen in a way that gives grace and gives space and gives understanding. And you could not even know what that meant for me, but because you spoke on it and you said that, it just impacted me so much. So I really appreciate that. Absolutely. And I don't think that men really understand how much we need that. So I thank you for that.
I think before you answer, just out of perspective, because it's everything, and this is something that we can learn across the board. Typically in relationships, you have people fighting for that space, and they don't know how to fight properly. That doesn't make either party wrong, doesn't make them right, but they're just trying to figure out a way, to your point, how to be seen, to be appreciated, to be acknowledged. And a lot of times, especially for us, we get it wrong. It's not necessarily that it's a lack of understanding. It's just we get it wrong because of the focus being off. And sometimes when you redirect your focus, it can help you gain the type of understanding that's more meant for the other person to know that they're being understood. So I hope that provided some clarity for you as well.
Yes. I learned so much. But when it comes to romantic relationships specifically, first I learned that I was very problematic, but it took for God to sit me down and go through these two situations during my battle for me to say, take a look. Because now I had to figure out, God blessed me and gave me the opportunity to live. What am I going to do with this gift? And I was used to using my gift for other people, for the world, through the arts. Like, that's always been me empowering. But at what cost was that to my personal relationships? And because during my journey, what I needed was the personal connections and relationships, it made me take a look at how am I showing up? And what I learned is that I showed up in fear. I showed up in insecurity. I showed up in entitlement, you know? I was not the partner. I wasn't the best version of myself with many of my past relationships. So once I realized that and started to move towards my current relationship, there was so much healing and conversation I had to have with myself, hard conversations, you know, because I wasn't innocent. You know, I wasn't innocent in a lot of the heartache that I experienced. I wasn't innocent. I played a part in it as well. And once I got to the root of why I was showing up the way I was showing up in those relationships, I was able to figure out how I now want to show up. You know, so that was a big lesson.
That's really good, and I'm glad that you touched on that. I don't have a rebuttal for that at all. You know, I just think that it's important for, you know, men to hear that, because you know it's a touchy situation, right? You know, cancer, like, because you're dealing with something that on the surface and how it looks to everybody, it's like, well, of course you need to be this way, that way, and the third, right? But I wish we would take that mentality and use it across the board, because your cancer is a man's mental health. You see where I'm going with it? And a lot of times, and I can keep going back and forth about different things that women feel like we're not being heard and men feel like they're not being heard. The powerful thing about your story and what you're acknowledging is, on one end, there does have to be that sensitivity and understanding and that safety and all of those things. But I want you to speak about the entitlement piece, because I do feel like the entitlement piece is breaking households.
Yes.
It's tearing relationships apart, right? And this could be very healing. Not could be, this will be very healing, not just with us in this room, but to our RM family, because there's a lot of people that, whatever their version of cancer is, you follow me? That they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And there's not a place and a space for that safetyness, that understanding, and then there's this going on. So the floor is yours, you know, to speak on the entitlement piece, because I do feel that there's a lot of learning there. Like, you've already addressed a lot of really amazing things across the board. But the entitlement piece, I feel like, gets us all in trouble.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, so how do we navigate in that space? Because it's very big of you to articulate it the way that you are, considering that you're battling for your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is tremendous. Like, and I salute you on that. But I think this is a great learning piece. So.
Yeah. So I was entitled to. I felt entitled to my partner's time. I felt entitled to be the center. I felt entitled to be the only one they desired. I felt to hold that place.
Yeah.
I felt entitled to their pity, you know?
Gotcha.
And what I learned, and of course, after I beat cancer, I still had remnants of it, because this is my whole dating life. I feel like I felt entitled in relationships.
Gotcha.
Like, we are together, so I am entitled to your thoughts. I'm entitled to to your emotions. I'm entitled to your time. But when I flip that and using my example, you know, what I went through, a man is not entitled to my body, no matter what our relationship is, right? And a lot of times for my partners, whether it's a male partner or a masculine partner or trans man partner, if it's on that spectrum, sometimes the emotional is just as huge as the physical is for me. So for me to say, oh, you're not entitled to my body because XYZ, who am I to say that I'm entitled to him expressing himself the way that I think he needs to express himself when he needs to express himself? It's the same thing. Like, I cannot be entitled with that. Instead, and this is what I'm learning now in my current marriage, is I have to be aware that this is my journey and I am not entitled to make anyone give me the experience that I think I want to have in my head. Like, I can't be entitled to that. We can co-create our existence together, but if you don't feel like talking, if you don't feel safe to talk and express in this moment, I cannot demand you in this moment to tell me right now how you're feeling. I'm not entitled to that. What I can do with compassion is give the space that is needed so that you feel safe to come, and now we can explore what's really going on. And so, you know, I had to learn that I was very entitled and very needy.
I love the way you articulated that. And one more really touching question before I pass it on to Ms. Scott. Do you feel that because of your relationships or interactions with men prior to and then what happened in this situation, is that what opened you to,
like, sexuality wise,
like,
or
because you're not married, right? And you said
I am
you're
married to a woman
with your with your wife, right? Do you think that were you open prior to this? Had you already participated or indulged in? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I have. I did. You know, and
because the way I look at it, let me just say this before you go. It was like we had I found out I got sick. I literally lost my dad, got some news, and then I was in these situationships. They were both men. It was really rough, and now I got a wife. She understands. It's all good. Like, you see how that?
Yeah.
So I was just trying to just gain some understanding on, you know, were we dibbling and dabbling prior to?
Because
was there like this? You know what? Y'all tripping over here. I mean, it's fair to ask something.
It is, and I love it, because I feel like these are the questions that we don't ask. And when we blur the lines that divide us, we understand that we are more connected, and we understand more than we ever allowed ourselves to, because we're being, you know, politically correct, or we're scared to ask. So I love that question. And in all transparency, you know, my relationship with my wife is just as challenging as my previous relationships with men. Like, it is not roses. It is not, you know, this is great. Now, it is great because, first of all, one of the things we did is we started marriage counseling. We were married. We got married. It'll be 2 years. And she got into a really bad truck accident and almost lost her life. And so we had about a year of healing. And right after that, I was
you were on the other side.
I was on the other side. And then I found myself.
Look at that.
Because
Look
God,
at that.
I'm gonna say this. The moment, so my wife, she broke her back in her accident, right? I don't know how real how real can we be on here? Because I'm about to be real. So it affected us being able to be intimate. Like it completely affected it because she was in so much pain. I remember in the midst of an argument and me expressing how we don't even have sex.
Wow, look at that.
And she
circle.
looks at me and says, I can't. And it
clicked right there.
And that's why I have forgiven him, because in that moment I could not understand the pain that she was carrying, because day-to-day life she was fine.
Yeah.
That's good.
But she's like, you don't understand the pain, and I had to check myself.
That's so
Wow.
good.
Like, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for giving me this reminder. And I made a pivot. In that conversation, I made a pivot. And I said, listen, baby, when you are ready, know I am here for you. But how you love me is not determined on how we are physically. And we're going to go to counseling. God had to show me that.
Wow.
Hey, listen, about to say something freaky, but I ain't.
This boy.
That's so amazing, man. I think that we're gonna pause there.
Yeah.
We're gonna let the folks marinate on that because that was powerful.
Yes.
But man, more with this conversation, and I got a page saved in this thing right here, Facing It Together. Y'all make sure y'all go get your copy. But I definitely want to read something to you and kind of get your initial take on what that makes you feel.
Definitely.
When we get back, relationships matter.
Relationships matter.
Welcome back to Relationships Matter. So we have Miss Onyx Keesha here. So let's continue the conversation. So what I want to ask is, what advice would you give to those who are trying to reclaim their sense of self after going through such like a major trauma like that?
I love that question, because right now my entire platform is about women rediscovering who they are, reclaiming who they are, and reigniting their passion. And so whether it is breast cancer, or it's you spent the last 30 years being a mom, or lost and being like a dope career woman, reclaiming yourself really starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
And my advice would be to just get really cozy with yourself. Like, remember the things that you did that made you happy. I'm still remembering, like, I'm still on medication, cancer medication, so I'm still in the midst of it. But since the hard battle, it's been almost 4 years.
Okay.
And I'm just now remembering who I was before. Like, I'm just now starting to resemble the woman I was, but in this magnified form because of what I went through. So my advice would really be to take time with self, because you cannot do anything if you don't know self.
Let me ask you this. How do you show up differently now in your relationship after having had the experience that you had with the previous relationship?
So first, I understand the fragility of life differently, and mortality differently. And I think that influences and informs the way that I forgive, the effort that I put in, because I went through this and I felt my own mortality. I'm highly aware that tomorrow is not promised in more than just words. It's ingrained in me. And so it's really two ways. Like, on one end, it allows me to be more open, more forgiving. But on the other end, I am notorious for saying this. I didn't fight for my life to not be happy.
Right.
So if this friendship, if this relationship, if this business connection is not serving me, then I have to exit. And that is a boundary that I did not have in the past. And it really is because I didn't fight. I didn't fight my ass off to not be happy, you know? And of course, little things, that's one thing. But if it's not serving me, then I do not want any parts of it, you know, without, you know, any negativity. It's just, I know what I need for myself. That was that. And that shows up in my romantic relationships as well. You know, I have said, you know, listen, we have to get this together because I did not fight for my life for me to be miserable. So how can you're going to work on it with me? We're going to work on it together. We're going to get to what we need to do, or we're not going to do this.
You're my twin. I'm big on saying that. So listen, page 68.
Okay.
I'm going to read something. It says the impact on the relationship. And I'm just going to read this and then you let me know what comes to mind. But it says, our relationship changed in ways I never expected. There were moments of deep connection, but also times of tension and frustration. We had to learn how to communicate all over again, how to be honest about our fears without overwhelming each other.
I mean, it actually makes me emotional. And I hate to think that something like cancer has to be the catalyst for us to get there in relationships, right? But everything changed. Everything. And, you know, it's almost like when someone you love is going through something so traumatic, you feel guilty about living in joy, you know, like about having good times, about wanting to be intimate or wanting to have connection. And then the person who's going through that feels like they can't communicate either. They can't communicate their fears. Like, it's one thing to say, I'm afraid of dying. Like, that, I feel like that's something we can understand. It's another thing to be afraid of losing your dignity in death, because without cancer, you pride yourself on your hair, on your makeup, on how you dress, and you're starting to feel like you might die, and you're going to die opposite of the person you cultivated, you know, you made yourself into. And a good relationship reminds you that you are none of that.
Are you living more now than you were then?
I am absolutely living more now. Because I'm aware of how short, how quickly life can change, and because I still have fear. You know, every day I have fear, but I would rather face it. I would rather do it scared than not do it at all, because I don't want to get to be, you know, 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and look back and say, I didn't do that. Before cancer.
Why are we like that?
Why was I like that?
Why? No, not you.
Oh.
But I mean, you could speak to this very well, but why are we like that as people? Like, why does in these situations and times does it take this moment to wake something up before, right? Because think about how many angels have nudged us in life and gave us a little bar here, a little situation there, or we had a little scare here.
Yeah.
You know, how many times have an angel been like, hey, bro, what we doing? Hey, queen?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, snap, I'm in it. So now I'm going to fight, please God. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I promise you I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Why?
You know, I say this all the time that, you know, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm trying to get them to understand something. I say, I pray you don't have to have this trauma for you to get it.
Yeah.
Like, please just listen to
That's
me.
good.
Because I pray you don't have to go through this trauma to get it. But then I understand that that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
Like, they have to go through it to get it, you know? They have to experience it for
good,
them
too.
to understand it. And I am so grateful. You know, when I tell people I'm grateful that I went through this journey, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, how are you grateful for cancer?
Yeah.
The woman that I am today would not be if God didn't take me through the journey.
Yeah.
Like, I would not be where I am career-wise. I wouldn't be where I am relationship-wise. I wouldn't be spiritually where I am, you know? So it really, I'm really grateful for the experience because of who I am today. And I couldn't be her.
That's big.
I couldn't. This version of Onyx, I was not. I thought before cancer, you know, I'm like, I'm doing this and I'm that and I'm, you know, I thought I was the shit. And God sat my ass down
Yeah.
and was like, all right, let's get really humble. Let's get really clear about the purpose and your calling. Let's go through this and let's see who you are after it. Because I said I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, but during my cancer journey, I didn't stop working. Like, I still produced plays. I still, like, art healed me. And I was only able to do that because I got really clear about my calling. Because God sat me down.
I was going to say, did it redefine your purpose?
It absolutely did. And it added an extra layer. You know, because Black women die 40% more than white women from breast cancer. That is crazy to me.
Yeah.
40% more deaths because we are Black. Not because we are Black, but as Black women. And it has to do with so much. Like, Black women get breast cancer younger, you know, and I know I had to advocate for my first mammogram, had to advocate for it because they were like, you're too young, your breasts are too big, it's just lumpy, you know, and it's like, no. So advocating for it, and then, you know, Black women get triple negative, which is more aggressive, and they get it younger, and we already don't trust the healthcare system. So many, and that goes back to culturally why it's a different experience. It's faith, but also there's deep-rooted mistrust in Black communities about healthcare, rightfully so, because of our history. So you have people in your ear who are like, don't do chemo. That's just the drug to XYZ. And they're giving you conspiracy theories and they're like, just drink this juice. You're battling that, and then you're battling the church saying, let me lay hands on you to take it away. And you're listening to your doctor, who a lot of times is a white man, telling you this is what you need to do. Something happened to me where my oncologist said, just get a mastectomy. Take them both away to prevent it from coming back. And I had a Black woman surgeon. Oncologist sent me to her because we were going to take my breast away. And she said to me, you don't need to do that. We're going to do a lumpectomy and we're going to see. You do not need to go through that surgery. And she sat down and talked to me about it. Had I not had her, I would have gone through taking my breast, removing my breast as part of the treatment and the prevention. Now, it's nothing against my oncologist, but there were so many nuances that he was not aware of, that he just had a blanket fix, that it took my surgeon to really say, hey, let's not go that extreme.
Can you real quickly touch on, and please forgive me,
Lumpectomy.
Lumpectomy. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
So can you touch on what that?
Yeah,
what that is?
I actually still have the scar. I'm very proud. There was a time when I was going through it, I did not want to show my scars. Like, now I'm like, I'm showing my breasts and I'm showing my scars, you know? But a lumpectomy is when they go in and they take the the tumor out or the cancer out, and they're only taking a portion of your breast out. They do the surgery and they remove it. Then they test it because they want to test it just to see, you know, what stage it is. They do all that testing, and then they start your treatment from that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the lumpectomy. So as opposed to, you know, let's just go and have a double mastectomy.
Thank you.
Well, this was an amazing interview, but we cannot let you leave before we ask you a question from our new Relationships Matter card game. Yes.
Oh, gosh.
So the question is, how do you feel about setting aside dedicated time to focus on healing and processing past pain and trauma together as a couple?
Oh, you said, how do I rate it?
It says, how do you feel about setting aside? So I guess what the question is surmising is, you're in a new relationship, right? How did you guys prioritize time to talk about maybe the previous experiences that you had? Like, how did that process go?
So first, I am a person who makes schedules and set goals and plans out everything. So for me, it's very natural for me to say, okay, every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we're going to sit down for an hour and we're going to talk about XYZ. My wife, opposite. She's like, I don't want to plan it. What is this? You know, so we had to come to a compromise. But I think it's important to be intentional about it. Like, it doesn't have to be as structured as I may want it to be, because then it kind of takes away from, you know, this being work. A lot of times a big complaint was, you're always working. I'm not work. I'm not one of your projects. You can't produce me. You can't produce our relationship, you know? And so I had to learn that I need to scale back on that because I am a producer.
I have to ask you this because you are married to a woman. I would think that it would be like being married to your good girlfriend and all you do is communicate and talk. Is it not that way?
Absolutely not. Oh my God. First of all, I am married to a masculine presenting woman. And so that's the first thing. And it goes beyond presenting and more, you know, I'm attracted to masculinity. So I'm attracted to the masculinity in her. Now, if I was dating a feminine woman, possibly it could be like that. But my wife has a lot of the same hang-ups, insecurities, fears that I have experienced in other relationships with masculine energy. So communication especially is like, you know, why do we gotta talk? We didn't talk about this. My family didn't talk, you know? So no, it's not. But I think that's so interesting because people outside of the community, that is the thought process, you know? So I'm always like, no. Don't come on his side and think it's safe. It's not.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
'Cause I had like 50 questions just pop up. But in closing,
yes,
it's me saying it, but it's not me saying it, if you follow what I'm saying. But you need to hear it from a male's point of view. I love you and I'm proud of you.
Oh.
And I think that your story, what you've endured, the lessons that you've learned, there's a lot of people that will be healed and you'll help. But most importantly, that the person that you helped the most was obviously yourself. You are a very strong and resilient woman. Continue to be the face, continue to speak out, to continue to be an example because people need that. And you're valued, you're worthy, you're appreciated. And God bless you, and I hope that you receive that.
I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence and all this pink. And everything else. And y'all make sure y'all go get this thing right here. Facing It Together by this lovely queen. Dope conversation. Appreciate you so much. God bless you. Relationships matter. Next time.
relationships matter. I need you.